Welcome to our Cork Unitarian Church Sunday service. And today's Sunday thoughts will be on the topic of Christmas, particularly, what the heck does anyone mean by the phrase, keep Christ in Christmas? That may initially seem like a question with an obvious answer, but I don't think so. I can get behind reasonable criticism about over-commercialization driving conspicuous consumption and one-upsmanship in buying the most, the best, and the latest. But I would also be critical of those excesses in consumerism with or without any Christmas involvement. I suppose the aspect of this which causes me the most difficulty is the seemingly implicit idea that there is some kind of cultural war going on against Christmas. Really? I'll give you an example. From time to time, I've heard various Christians, some of them being very devotedly religious, go on about what to them was the sacrilege, or at least the blasphemy, of using the term Xmas instead of Christmas. They passionately would explain to me that Xmas was a plot by secular forces to substitute an algebraic symbol of the unknown for Jesus. Of course, the reality is that the Christian Greek writers of the New Testament and the later Christian Greek copyists routinely used the Greek letter chi, written as an X, as a monogram for the word Christ. This kind of abbreviation was so common that the term Christogram is used to describe such religious abbreviations. But let me pause here and let's take our minds back to the earliest days of the Christian church. As best we can tell, no one in those days seemed to be talking about keeping Christ in Christmas. For the earliest Christians, Christmas is a holiday on a specific annual date commemorating the birth of Jesus of Nazareth was simply not a thing. There were a couple of likely reasons for this. For one thing, while there are accounts of the first Christmas in the Gospels attributed to Luke and Matthew, there was a problem. There was no date mentioned in those first birthday accounts. As a practical matter, it's difficult to collectively celebrate the anniversary of an event without an agreed upon date. Another reason is that it was not a big deal for early Christians. This is because their theology was eschatological, meaning they were focused on what they believed was the imminent coming of the end times. These early Christians were much more likely to be thinking about Jesus returning soon, as in during their own lifetime. So reflecting back to commemorate the anniversary of Jesus' earthly birth would just not have been of any great interest to them. As time went on, and more generations of Christians lived and died without the world ending and without Jesus returning, Christian theology began to change. However, Christian recognition of the commemorative dates tended to focus more on death anniversaries than birth anniversaries. For instance, such things as the anniversary of a death of a local or a famous martyr, and of course the death of Jesus himself. Now, by the first half of the 4th century, things had changed even more. Christianity had been officially legalized and was being fast-tracked to soon become the official state religion. Estimates were that about half of the Roman population of that time were already Christian. Then, in the year 350, Common Era, Pope Julius I chose the 25th of December as the date for Christmas. It was a convenient choice, as it fell close enough within the range of the dates of the winter solstice and some of the most important Roman pagan holidays. Perhaps the first attempt of keeping Christ in Christmas was the theological justification for the setting of the 25th of December as Christmas. Apparently, back then, seemingly everyone knew that the 25th of March was the anniversary of the date of creation as described in Genesis. So, it would only make sense to those people that Jesus' mother Mary would have also conceived Jesus on the 25th of March, being the anniversary of the creation of the world. Add 9-month duration of Mary's pregnancy, and Christmas on December 25th of December becomes theologically validated. Now, Christmas celebrations during the late Roman Empire and early Middle Ages were very fluid in terms of how people celebrated and what they celebrated, what times they celebrated. For one thing, the modern calendar with leap year adjustments was just not yet in use. As a result, dates tended to get out of sync over time. Contemporary legacy of that is the 13-day difference between Christmas in the Western Church and Christmas in the Eastern Orthodox Church. Another way in which the celebration of Christmas was fluid was that Christmas was an extended season with multiple Christmas-related holidays in it. The season began 40 days prior to Christmas and extended past Christmas by 12 days to the Feast of the Epiphany. Different local customs and traditions grew around these related holidays. For example, in many cases, gift giving was more associated with Epiphany, which commemorates the Feast of the Wise Men, than with the actual day of Christmas. So everybody was doing things a bit differently. Now, all of these Christmas-related dates became somewhat standardized by the Christian Church in the middle of the 6th century Common Era. Now, as much as Christian notions about Christmas have evolved through history, there have been times and places where various groups of Christians actually seem to think there should not be a Christmas. It was almost like they're from the keep Christ out of Christmas school of thought. For example, in 1640, the Parliament of Scotland officially abolished the observance of Christmas, claiming the church had been purged of all superstitious observation of days. 7 years later, the Puritan-led English Parliament banned the celebration of Christmas, claiming it was a festival with no biblical justification and a time of wasteful and immoral behavior. They replaced it with an official day of fasting. About a decade after that, the Puritans of the Massachusetts Bay Colony in America made it a criminal offense to publicly celebrate the holiday and declared that whosoever shall be found observing any such day as Christmas or the like, either by forbearing of labor, feasting, or any other way, was subject to a 5-shilling fine. And that would be about 3 days of skilled wages pay. But apart from history, there is also the matter that even today, there are some Christian groups who are opposed to celebrating a Christmas holiday. And this would include Jehovah's Witnesses, Seventh-day Adventist Church, Religious Society of Friends, better known perhaps as the Quakers, and various fundamentalist church groups. They just seem to be of the opinion that recognizing a Christmas holiday is just not biblically supported, and therefore kind of unchristian. Now, it's difficult for me personally to get behind the idea that Christmas is unchristian or could be unchristian. But on the other hand, what if Christmas had become something bigger than Christian? Would Christ still be in it? Would we still see Christ in it? For example, let's just consider what happened during the Victorian period that has so much influence on our modern Christmas culture. In 1822, an Episcopal minister, Clement Mark Moore, wrote a Christmas poem, which we now know as The Night Before Christmas. The poem depicted Santa Claus as a jolly man who flies from home to home on a sled driven by reindeer to deliver toys. Then, in 1843, Charles Dickens, a Unitarian, published A Christmas Carol, featuring the change of heart of the villainous Ebenezer Scrooge. By 1870, Christmas was declared a federal holiday in the United States. 1 year later, it was designated as a bank holiday in Scotland. And then, in 1881, political cartoonist Thomas Nast drew on Moore's The Night Before Christmas poem to create the visual image of Santa Claus as we know him today. I don't know about you, but I kind of like these various extensions to Christmas. They make the commemoration of the day more inclusive, just as Matthew's Gospel did when it included the Magi in its version of the story. For some reason, I don't mind hearing Happy Holidays used interchangeably with Happy Christmas or Merry Christmas. Survey data indicates that this year, 92% of the people in the UK and 83% of the people in the US will be celebrating Christmas. That implies that approximately half of those celebrating Christmas do not identify as being Christians, and they would not be celebrating religiously. And likely half of those who do identify with Christianity, a good number of them would not be doing anything which might be considered particularly religious. But I will suggest that a lack of religiosity does not imply an absence of spirituality. I, for one, would not conclude that there is no Christ in such an expanded and inclusive Christmas. I'll leave it to you to draw your own conclusions on the presence or absence of spirituality and Christness in an expanded Christmas. And to help you a bit with that, I will share with you the transformed image of the character Ebenezer Scrooge as described by Charles Dickens at the conclusion of his Christmas Carol story. Scrooge states, "I will honor Christmas in my heart and try to keep it all the year. I will live in the past, the present, and the future. The spirits of all three shall thrive within me. I will not shut out the lessons that they teach." And the narration then continues. Scrooge was better than his word. He did it all and infinitely more. And to Tiny Tim, who did not die, he was a second father. He became as good a friend, as good a master, as good a man as any the good old city knew, or any other good old city, town, or borough in the good old world. Some people laughed to see the alteration in him, but he let them laugh, and little heeded them, for he was wise enough to know that nothing ever happened on this globe for good at which some people did not have their fill of laughter at the outset. So that concludes our Sunday thoughts. And I wish you peace and blessings. And I hope that you find your own Christness in your Christmas. Thank you.